All right, folks, here we go again. It's another one of those episodes of Dawson's Crack. What is Dawson's Crack, you say? It is the Dawson's Creek rewatch, first time watch, podcast / cardcast, where we go through every single episode of Dawson's Creek in a row until I physically can't stand it anymore. And so far, we've already knocked out episode 1 through 6 of Dawson's Creek, and we're now on episode 7. That means for us, it's episode 6 because we don't count the first episode of Dawson's Crack. And we're going to do another one of those summaries like we always do. We're going to summarize the episode. Episode's name is Detention, and it is listed as follows. Dawson, Joey, Jen, Pacey, Abby Morgan, who we don't even know yet, all spend Saturday in detention. And I like to call this episode the infamous Breakfast Club episode. One of my least, I wouldn't say least favorite episode by far, but not the best episode in my opinion. I know we usually don't bring up that stuff, but we're going to do it today because we're doing it a little different. But yeah, it's just not, I don't know. We'll talk about it at the end. All right, and where does this episode start? The same place the episode always starts. It's in Dawson's bedroom. And of course, it's Joey and Dawson watching a movie on TV. Dawson gets disgusted with the movie because there's drag racing going on, and then he goes into this tirade about how it's so unrealistic for a woman to find a man attractive who's dangerous and fun and romantic in that way. Joey shuts him down and says women have every right to do the same things men do and be completely superficial and want the biggest dick in the room. And Dawson's super mad about that and says, no, they want a dude who knows what's romantic, that kind of shit. And dude, you don't know what women want anyway. The only person you've ever been with is Jen. You don't know, whatever. But anyway, they have a little wrestling match, Joey and him do, over the remote. And that's when she throws it in his face that if he knows what women want, why doesn't Jen want anything to do with him in that department? Dawson looks depressed. So we cut back to one of our other favorite places to always be. They're in school. Joey's delivering a presentation on 17th century Japan. She starts talking about into the icky practice of concubines. And one of the jocks perks up and starts running his mouth, saying how awesome it would be to be a shogun and have a harem. Joey cuts him down, says she doesn't want to hear anything about the misogyny. And of course, the dude keeps going with his bullshit and says no, he wants to hear more about how women are subservient to him. And Joey calls him a bunch of names, says he's got a low IQ. Teacher does nothing. No intervention from the teacher whatsoever. I mean, I get it. It's a TV show, but the teacher isn't even present. They could have just put one little line in there where he says, Grant, mind your business. Nope, nothing. Teacher's just completely useless in this situation. So we cut to Dawson and Jen together, and Jen and Pacey are talking, having a laugh. Dawson walks over to find out what's going on, and she says nothing, it's an inside joke. That's when Pacey rushes off to go to class, and Jen and Dawson walk down the hallway hand in hand, and she suggests they have a fun, sexy time, go out, do some river rafting or something. And for the first time ever, Dawson is actually intrigued by this, as opposed to his usual prudy nature, where he's just a fucking killjoy. So that's a nice little change of pace. So we cut to Dawson and Pacey in gym class in the changing room. He starts grilling him about why Jen was giggling when they were talking earlier. He wants to know exactly what they were trash talking him about, which is dude, Dawson, calm the fuck down. Pacey confesses that he actually told Jen about his old nickname of Oompa Loompa, which is not cool. Come on, Pacey, you dick. And of course, that doesn't go well for Dawson because he's now mad at Pacey and mad at Jen, both of them for laughing at him behind his back. And I get his, but Dawson is so fucking sensitive all the time, dude. It's dude, chill. Or attack Pacey back. Pacey obviously has shit you can make fun of. Why just, internalize it and then become a big pill for the rest of the episode? Calm down, Dawson. So we cut to Jen in a different classroom. She's in Mr. Pickering's class, I think is what his name was. It's supposed to be a health class, and they're having a discussion about euthanasia, which is super weird. Also, for 15-year-olds to be having a discussion about euthanasia seems awfully odd, but whatever. That's when Jen speaks up and says that she thinks euthanasia is totally acceptable, and that in certain situations where you're suffering, it's a gift. He flips out at her for having the gall to say dying with dignity and says, we don't do these in Cape Side. We're not like you New Yorkers and, your funky ideas. And she says, well, if someone is suffering and wants to be, wants a relief, it's completely acceptable in her mind to euthanize somebody. He flips out and says, life is God's most precious gift, which I'm like, dude, you're a teacher. I know it's different now because of whatever. But like back then, there was clearly a definitive separation of church and state. Like, I don't think you're allowed to say that's God's gift. I really don't. Like, that seems weird to me. Ignore the glasses change. So it just seems inappropriate. But because Jen fought with him and is theoretically insubordinate, she, of course, gets detention. What detention? Saturday detention, because they got to do the setup. So, and one of the other lines he says that's weird is, he says, this isn't Times Square, because she's from New York. And I'm like, dude, you're just a shitty teacher. Like, you suck. I don't like you. Then we cut to Joey in the cafeteria line. She's yet again fighting with the Grant dude that was the one running his mouth about her presentation earlier. And Grant says some nasty shit to Joey about how he's a shogun of the school and this is his castle and like he gets what he wants. And I'm like, dude, way to give off super date rape vibes, buddy. Joey, of course, responds by punching him and smacking him with a lunch tray. Food goes everywhere, and it's like, dude, yeah. Concubines, like, Grant is clearly the dick in this case, and yet Joey's the one that gets sent to detention. Like, fuck you, Grant. You suck. That's when we cut back to Dawson and Pacey, and he says he wants to stay after class and play a few one-on-one hoops in front of the cheerleaders to impress him. Pacey starts to score on Dawson, and then Dawson gets a few baskets in front of him, makes him look bad, so he refers to him yet again as the Oompa Loompa. He reacts very poorly to this, smacks Pacey directly in the face with the ball, breaking his nose. All the cheerleaders run over, and then guess who's sentenced to, yet again, Saturday detention. Now we have Dawson in Saturday detention, Joey in Saturday detention, and Jen in Saturday detention. So now we cut to Saturday in the library. Of course, Jen and Dawson arrive in the high school library for their Saturday detention. In comes Pacey with his obviously very broken nose, sitting at the table. Jen's like, yo, how did you end up in detention? And he's like, I don't want to talk about it, and is super pissy. Then we meet Abby Morgan, who I don't remember from any other episode, but it's possible she was in an episode I forgot about. And she is the talkative, bitchy one, and she calls it howdy doody time and sets the scene of, being that person who pushes the plot along. She's basically doing the Judd Nelson of Breakfast Club, where, like, pot stirring on everybody. And then they're missing one person, and that is, of course, Joey. The teacher comes in, starts yelling at everybody. It's Mrs. Tingle, by the way, which is a ridiculous name, and says, where's your fifth person? Joey comes in. She's obviously late. And then they, of course, get the Breakfast Club setup of, everybody behave yourself. I'm going to go to the AV room and watch a movie. Nobody leave the library. And teacher is going to leave you completely unsupervised in the library for Saturday detention. Of course she is. That's when Abby starts going around the room, polling everybody a la Judd Nelson style to try to determine what everybody did to get in detention. She picks Pacey first and says, well, what did you do? He, of course, refuses to say what he did. And she says it's probably made up another lie about banging another English teacher, which is a shitty thing to say. We cut to hours later, Dawson complaining and says, this is so very Breakfast Club. And I'm like, dude, you didn't, it's so on the nose. You didn't have to say it, but you said it. So it is what it is. That's when we cut to Mrs. Tingle. It turns out she's watching Days of Our Lives in her office. Abby suggests they all play Truth or Dare and targets Pacey first, saying truth. And you knew Abby was going to do it. Of course, she asks Pacey why he's in detention for his truth, and then he immediately switches it to Dare. As soon as he switches it to Dare, she says, you got to smooch for 10 seconds, and she picks Jen to smooch for 10 seconds. And the thing is, Jen and Pacey have already kissed anyway, because, of course, there was that episode a while back where they were making the movie, and there was the kiss scene, so it's like not a weird thing for them to kiss, but for 10 seconds, I guess it's a little too intimate. Dawson gets pissed off about the situation. Pacey immediately attacks Joey and says, well, why don't you reveal who your true love is for her truth? She immediately swaps up to Dare, and not surprisingly, they up the ante and say, okay, your dare is to kiss Dawson for 15 seconds instead of 10. They kiss, she's, of course, been in love with Dawson since the pilot, so this is not a new thing, but in the presence of Jen is obviously pissed. Abby thinks it's all pretty, hot and heavy, and Pacey snickers because he wants to get even with Dawson for breaking his nose. That's when it's Joey's turn, and of course, she's got to get revenge on everybody else, so she attacks Jen and says, do you think Dawson's the best guy in Cape Side? And she makes some snarky comments about how, she lusts after Dawson, and then she goes after Joey and says, if you minded your own fucking business and didn't pay attention to my relationship with Dawson, maybe you'd have your own boyfriend. And it's like, ooh, that was a burn. Come on now. Now Dawson poses the jailbreak from Breakfast Club where they're all running down the hall doing their thing, and they sneak off and slide by Mrs. Tingle in her office to go photocopy their butts, which I think is like a weird, I don't know, it's a weird thing. So they're all going to photocopy their butts, and then they're going to do a guess your butt game, which I find inappropriate in all levels. But I get it. They're kids. They're fucking around, whatever. And that's when there's a little tension because, of course, Jen immediately picks out Pacey's bare ass. Like, it's super easy. Dawson gets pissed off and he wants a rematch, so they're going to go to the gym and they're going to have a rematch of their one-on-one basketball game from earlier. So now there's a little snark between Joey and Jen. She says, get out your pom-poms. Jen is like, I was just trying to be your friend. I don't understand why you're such a bitch to me. Abby points out the obvious, that Joey is clearly madly in love with Dawson, and that's why she's being a bitch. They have a little back and forth, a bunch of cattiness, and then they realize what time it is, and that they have to run back to the library so that they don't get caught fucking around. They, of course, get caught, and then they have to explain themselves, and they basically say that they were starving to death, so they had to leave to go find food, and that's the only reason they were out of the library. Mrs. Tingle does not like this, and she immediately takes the card catalogs out of there, which you probably don't remember what those are, unless you're as old as I am, but they were the things that used to have the numbers for what all the books were, and she then proceeds to take those out, pour them on the ground so that they now have to alphabetize them. And I'm like, Mrs. Tingle, not cool, dude. Not only did you make a big fucking mess, but there's no way they're going to get that back together correctly. Ever. Never going to happen. So now they're alphabeticalizing the card catalog. Abby shows the drawer to Mrs. Tingle so that they can get out of detention. At this point, you find out it's like 5 o'clock. So they're way past when you should have had these kids in there. Like, you're basically keeping them prisoner at this point. Like, that's crazy. Then you find out the reason Abby's in detention is because she has excessive tardies, which she's, of course, presented herself as the bad girl, so that makes her look bad. She says she was at a drug-filled orgy earlier, but she actually was just there because she had a bunch of tardies. So everybody's making fun of her, and then she says, well, now you have to tell us exactly why you're in here, Pacey, because, like, you're going to make fun of me. Why are you here? And also, Dawson and him have a little bickering match about how dare he kiss Jen, and how dare you call me Oompa Loompa, and all this shit. And then you find out why Pacey's actually in detention. And apparently, Pacey is in detention because they discovered him jerking off in the fucking, like, locker room, right? They walked in on him beating off in the locker room. And because he was, after the cheerleaders were helping him out with his broken nose, he apparently got a boner and decided to whack one out and didn't do it in like a closed area. And I'm like, dude, that's definitely your fault, dude. Like, what are you doing? Take it home, put it in a stall, do anything but what you did. So that's why he got detention. But I'm also not sure if that's a detention level crime. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's weird. That revelation kind of takes the sting out of everything, so everybody seems a lot more sympathetic to everybody. Pacey says he's sorry that he's such a loser and he didn't mean to be a dick. Abby is kind of cool about it because it's funny. So it kind of takes the sting out of everything. And now, of course, we come to the finale of the episode. Everybody's standing there. Everybody's talking to everybody, and that's when Dawson just comes out and says it, like, hey, why don't you want to hit this? And they have a little back and forth, and he says one of the weirder lines of this episode. He said, that's all well and good, but I still want to bam bam in the ham. Bam bam in the ham? That's fucking gross, dude. I do not like that imagery. So they have a whole thing about how, like, everybody's feeling everything they're feeling, and why is everybody so obsessed with sex? And then, of course, it boils down to him and Jen having it out, or him and Joey having it out. And Joey, of course, is trying to express to him, like, hey, I have all these weird feelings that I can't understand, and I don't want to be a virgin forever, but I also don't want to put it out in the world. I don't want to say it, because what if I say it, and it changes our whole dynamic, and it's so painful. We have this great platonic friendship. They're both despondent, just staring into space at the end of this, as Mrs. Tingle comes in to tell everybody their detention is over. And the last scene of the episode is Pacey and Jen staring off at Dawson, who's worriedly staring at Joey. So we understand the whole dynamic that's going on here. How did I feel about this episode? I didn't think it was that great. I get the plot movement. It's important to have the whole thing progress with Dawson and Joey, obviously understanding that they both have weird feelings for each other and that Joey's had all these feelings the whole time, and Dawson is now understanding that like their friendship is different, their dynamic's different. It's a little weird that Pacey was jerking off in school, but it is funny. I get the joke, but I also don't get the joke because I find it kind of gross. And then the relationship between Jen is just kind of out there. She's just off, out there. A plot device. They don't expand on her at all in this episode, other than basically making her a foil for Dawson's feelings for Joey. I think they could use her better than they do a lot of times so far, and I'm really not sure where we're headed, but I really just think like her character is getting wasted a lot of times because we're spending so much time with Dawson and Joey's bullshit that we're just not developing a good, like, we started off good. There was the good shit with like the horrible situation she had in New York where all that went on, and we have the weird relationship with her and Graham and a little bit of development. And obviously she was upset about the euthanasia because she's thinking about her grandfather. All the interactions with the teachers are inappropriate. The school they go to is fucking ratchet. And it is what it is. So this episode in particular was just not my jam. I like the hurricane episode better. I didn't think it was a waste of space or like a completely unwatchable episode or a fill episode. There was plot movement in it. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't that good for me. So what have we accomplished so far? A lot of stuff. We're going to move on to our next episode. We're going to do it all over again next time on episode 8 of Dawson's Creek, episode 7 of Dawson's Crack. If you like us and subscribe. If you don't like us, that's okay. I get it. It's understandable. We'll keep doing what we're going to do, and we're going to try to do it better next time. Love you guys. Bye.